progressing fairly typically up until that point, meeting most of the milestones. He was laughing, he was smiling at me, he was looking at me. We were playing and interacting. And then fairly rapidly he started to lose a lot of those milestones. He developed a very flattened affect. He stopped looking at my wife and I in the eyes. He certainly stopped laughing or making any of his sounds. And so that's when we knew that something had gone wrong. And so that's when we started the process of getting a diagnosis, which eventually turned out to be that of moderate to severe autism with severe developmental delay.
Actually, high school sweethearts, and both went to college at Purdue, and we were married. And my background, I have an electrical engineering degree and an accounting degree, and my husband has a Juris Doctorate as an attorney, and we have 3 children. Our oldest now is 12, and we have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, 2 boys and a girl. So that's kind of our background. Did I forget anything?
No. We started having children probably around, how old were you when we had our first child?
28.
28, so a little bit later in life, I guess. I guess that's the trend. So tried to get established, get our careers started, kind of, and then started having children. So our oldest boy is 12. He's in what grade now?
He's a 6th grader.
He's a 6th grader. He's a shy boy. He's a very sensitive boy. He would probably be on the upper end of the autism spectrum, I would say. Is in fairly normal setting in his schooling. He hasn't done a whole lot of the specific myriad of therapies that are out there for autistic children. And in fact, our middle boy, who's 10, is clearly autistic. Our older boy, I probably put off for a long time even accepting that he could be on the spectrum. He was a little shy. He was a little slower to talk. Probably didn't start actually making sense until he was 6 or 7. I mean, he would mouth the words, but it was unintelligible for the most part.
Our oldest is 12 and our middle child is 10, and they're both on the spectrum.
Almost 2 years old before she said anything. And the first thing she said was drink. She wanted to drink. That was the first word she said. She was probably maybe 5, and they diagnosed her with pervasive developmental disorder. Because back then, if they couldn't put you in a mild, moderate, or severe mental handicap, that was the catch-all for all the other kids that they didn't know what to do with. And she would not participate in a lot of the testing they did down there. So they felt like they didn't get accurate, results from the testing. So it was PDD for a long time.
I went to a small rural high school. I graduated and got a bachelor's of science in psychology in 1999 and got married. In 2000 is when I had my first son, and then in 2006 I had my other one. They are exact polar opposites of each other. My 12-year-old has an autism diagnosis as well as some other medical diagnoses, epilepsy, autism, mitochondrial disease, and muscle disease. He's very sweet and kind-hearted, always been very social, very loving, even with the autism diagnosis, but learning is very difficult for him. My 8-year-old is the very active, very verbal, always talking, constantly. They get along very well, but I've always found it interesting to see how two boys in the same house can be complete polar opposites.
After our middle boy came along, so clearly had these needs, it probably distracted us a little bit, at least me, because we, once we had our middle boy, we knew we had to do something, all of our attention kind of went to that, especially for me, and maybe I was a bit reluctant, or in denial, if you want to say, about him actually being on the spectrum, because the spectrum is so wide, right? I mean, I hadn't seen my middle boy who clearly had these issues, and our older boy who was fairly successful, had a little idiosyncrasies, but my wife could kind of feel it right away, sooner than I could for our older boy. Yeah, she could see it right away, and I have this very clear memory of her actually begging me, saying, please, we must have him tested, we must have this done. And for years, a couple of years, I'm like, oh, he's just shy, he's just a little bit slower, he'll grow out of it. And so when we did finally test him and, showed he was probably on the high end of it, that's kind of when I really accepted it, really. I don't know if it was a subconscious denial or if I really actually believed that his developmental delays were a result of this. But once we got the testing, then, okay, let's figure out what to do for him too. Let's focus on him too, instead of just assuming everything is going to eventually even itself out for him. And it was difficult at first because, like I said, at that age 3 or 4, he was doing a lot of things that may seem kind of advanced a little bit. Like I said, he could memorize very well. And so when we would go into our pediatrician and we would voice our concerns, for some other things, he would spit out his ABCs and count and be able to do some minor addition. And the pediatrician was like, oh, he'll grow out of it, he's fine. In fact, that kind of, looking back at it, we really felt that we'd lost some time because our pediatrician wasn't willing to accept our other concerns. So we felt we lost some time, that we kind of felt in our heart that we knew about age 3. And then finally getting some confirmation was kind of a double-edged sword. We felt, okay, we're not crazy, but now we have a lot to try to understand ourselves, and we kind of have to adjust our whole life now. The hospital that did his diagnosis. And it was a day-long event, and it was kind of odd, and a lot of small rooms with two-way mirrors where, a therapist would be in there rolling a ball back and forth with him, and we were on the other side of the mirror. And, they finally, after all the tests, they set us down in a room on a couch and said, yeah, he's autistic, and that really kind of, I don't know, it kind of drained you for a second, just kind of all thought. And I remember walking out back to our car, and you're just kind of in a daze, really. You don't know what this means. I mean, we have our boy who, he's still here, he's still with us, he's still the same, but we now have this huge, thing that's right beside us now that we don't know what it means or how to deal with it.
I kind of went through a process. I don't know if this is true for all parents, but first I felt like, okay, I must have done something wrong while I was pregnant. And then you want a name for it, okay? And then when you can't get a name for it, you don't care what they call it anymore, you just want to know what they're going to do about it. But they couldn't. There wasn't, any specialized classes at school back then. She was just in with all the other kids until probably, let's see, maybe like 3rd grade, and they put her in a special ed class, I think.
Scouring the internet and kind of tried to do some diagnosis and some self-planning, and you try to figure out what's available, what do most people do, and how do other people handle this. And because we were basically at a complete loss, we didn't know what to do at all. Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot that Google had to offer back then, especially relative to today. There was not support groups that we could find, and again, we're just starting out. It seems like such a monster to climb, such a large hill to climb. There's just it's like you're thrown completely outside of your element, outside of your expectations, outside. It's a whole new language. It's a whole new world that you have to learn and kind of fumble around in the dark with for a while to get your bearings. And that's what I felt like at first, is that you were just kind of lost. You didn't know what to do. There was no support immediately offered. Nothing we could really kind of sink our teeth into as to our direction going forward at that point. Really, to be honest, it probably took us 6 months before we took any immediate action. You know what I mean? You spend that time just trying to, orient yourself and learn as much as you can. But we didn't do anything seriously for a period of months, and then we kind of introduced the subject to our parents and grandparents and relatives, and some were, I remember a couple of them, I don't know, were just like, no, that's silly. That's silly. Look at what he can do. It's just silly. I think they associated it with a form of mental retardation, basically. Yeah, instead of just a disability, he was mentally retarded, if we want to say that. So some were more accepting than others, yeah. But I think everybody trusted us to know what to do. Maybe some of it was just trying to reassure us, that things would be okay in their own way.
Was almost 2 years old before she said anything. And the first thing she said was drink. She wanted to drink. That was the first word she said.
He wanted to communicate and wanted to initiate communication, but he just seemed like he didn't know how to. So he would always be making noises, but it wasn't functional communication. He could say words, but it was never the right word for what he wanted. He would use mom and dad for everything. So if he wanted a cookie, he would say mom, 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 when he pointed to the cookie. So I think in his mind, he equated something good that I want with mom and dad. It wasn't until probably age 3 that communication was more functional to him, to where he was able to ask what he wanted. It was still very difficult. We used a lot of slining, and he used a lot of grunting and pointing, but it was a little bit easier at that point.
She had echolalia, okay? So she couldn't form her own, it wasn't that she couldn't form her own thoughts, she just didn't know how to express them. Right. So she just repeated what other people said. And so a lot of times, even sometimes still today, if you ask her a question, it's not that she doesn't know the answer to your question, it's that you didn't ask the right question. So sometimes I might have to ask her the same thing 4 or 5 different ways to get the answer I want. She just doesn't know how to start a conversation, and she would always talk about the same things. Do you have a pet? What color are your eyes? The same things. And so in music therapy, they've really been working hard on that to learn to talk about more appropriate, general things that, she could talk about with her peers at social groups. And I've seen a big improvement in that in the last 6 months, probably.
We thought he was reading by 3. He had the whole Cat in the Hat book memorized by the age of 3.
What was the issue? Was it non-compliance?
Not a lot of non-compliance.
Yeah.
A lot of he would repeat, a lot of what we were saying. So we would ask him a question like, "What are you doing?" And he would say, "What are you doing?" Or
What is your name? And he'd say, what is your name?
How old are you?
Yeah.
How old are you? So there was a lot of repetitiveness. And then once we you know, they're the ones that came to us and said, you might want to have them tested by the school system. His story's a little bit different than I would think the typical child with autism. He was a 26-weeker, so he was born at 1.5 pounds. So from the very beginning, I knew that things were obviously going to be different. Development would most likely not happen according to, you know, all the charts and everything the pediatrician gives you. He was very developmentally delayed. We received services through First Steps, PT, OT speech, developmental therapy, and also a nutritionist came out to the home weekly or monthly. But around age 2, I knew that we were dealing with something more than, you know, a typical preemie development of just being behind. So from age 2 to 4 is when I knew something was not right and we needed to look into it further.
I see.
He is constantly exhausted. He has a lot of muscle weakness and muscle pain, so there's a lot of like leg aches, headaches. It affects him neurologically, so with the seizure disorder. Around age 12 is when he really first started to realize that what he has to do is different than what a lot of his friends. He also has a G-tube. So, you know, why do I have to take all these medicines? You know, why do I have to do the G-tube? He's very self-conscious now. It never really used to bother him. But when we go swimming and he has to get fluids, you know, at the public pool, he's very conscious. So I think he's just now starting to kind of deal with being different. That's really why we're seeing the therapist and the psychiatrist. He's got a lot of issues with anxiety and possibly some depression, so he's medicated for that.
Social.
Yeah, and that social piece is just very difficult because he's high functioning, so he wants to have friends and he feels that, you know, inner need to connect with people. But then with, you know, the issues with the autism, he doesn't know how, to where it would come naturally for another child, or really even for adult to want to connect with somebody else and talk and that type of thing. It's just very difficult for him.
My daughter, she would lay in bed and cry for no reason. And I would go in there and I'd say, what's wrong? And she'd say, I don't know. And I'd say, what can I do to make you feel better? And she'd say, I don't know. And I didn't think that was any way for her to live. And so we did put her on some antidepressants. I don't know if that's common in autistic kids or not, but it was for her. And so we just kept, you know, messing around with meds and dosages until we could get her on the least amount that we could, and she'd still be on an even keel. I don't want her laying in her room all the time crying. That's ridiculous. Nobody should have to live like that. So I'm okay with giving something to make her quality of life better. But as far as medicating them up so that they sit in their chair and be quiet, no. They want to do that from the time they're in kindergarten, and they're little kids. No kid, whether they're autistic or normal, is going to sit in a chair and be still all day long. They're a kid. So let them be a kid. And I also think when they're that little, you know, their brains and their neurological system is still developing, it's still learning. What's all those meds doing to their brain? How do you know if you did not give them that, they could be even better now if they hadn't had that when they were 5? So I'm not a medication advocate, but there are times when you need to do it. But if you don't feel good about it, then it's probably wrong. And I didn't feel good about it, I didn't want to do it. And so we didn't really cross that bridge until all that crying started. And that was like a puberty thing too, so. And so she still takes the antidepressant now, but it's a very small dosage. And she'll probably always will. I don't think that's probably not going to change, but I'm okay with it. Because I know that she's happy all the time now, and that's what I want her to be, so.
When he was smaller, it was very isolating. He was diagnosed in 2004, and at that time, there weren't support groups, and I didn't know of anybody else that had a child with autism at that time. So knowing that your child's different, you can't go to birthday parties and you can't go to, the McDonald's play place because it's so scary. What if they act up? What if there's an issue? What if they're bullied by another child? So we really didn't get out much. And it's difficult to form relationships with other parents when you're very protective of your child. You don't want them to get hurt. And so you don't do play groups and PTO and that type of things. But it gets easier as they get older.
She's 22. She's out of high school. She's kind of a homebody like me. A lot of times you have to force her to go places. But then once she's there, she's glad to be there. But she would just soon stay at home all day long in her pajamas. She could not do the academic stuff. And they only, just for an example, they only gave them till like the end of 3rd grade to learn to add. And if they could not grasp that, then they just taught them to use a calculator. And I wasn't okay with that. I wanted them to continue to try and teach her to add,
Right.
but they wouldn't do it.
So,
They said, we don't have time. So that's just how, I don't know how it is now, that's just how it was then. They gave them to the end of 3rd grade. If they didn't get it, calculator. And so even though I tried to teach her at home, they let her use a calculator at school, so then at home she wanted to use a calculator at home too. So it was a big, it just got to be too much, so I gave in and let her use the calculator. Anything that they wouldn't do at school, we had to work on at home. And then when she was little, she had her grandparents on her father's side. They diligently worked with her every day while I was at work to teach her her ABCs with the little magnetic, so she knew her ABCs, she could count, but that was all, rote repetition. Because that's how she learns best, is by repetition. She can recite whole books, whole stories, word for word, without even looking at the book. But she has very little comprehension sometimes
I see.
of what she reads. She can read anything, but comprehension, not that great. When she was in school, that was our life. Every day after work, we would work on homework for hours with very little progress. And usually we both ended up sitting at the table crying because it was just so frustrating for both of us.
Yes, he's very verbal. He can communicate with you. If you don't know him, his language seems odd. He likes to initiate interaction with peers and adults, but it's very difficult for him to sustain that. He really doesn't get reciprocal speech, so if you would ask him a question, he doesn't always answer appropriately, and it's very difficult to have a conversation with him at times. And if I had a typically developing child, and then all of a sudden that child were to lose skills or things they could do, I knew from the beginning that things were not going to be how I thought that, that picture in my head, the perfect child and, doing all these specific things. I knew it was going to be different. He was in the hospital for 3.5 months. So by the time I brought him home, I had dealt with it as best as I think I could have, and I was ready to get started and try to help him be what he could be.
My father died before she was born, and my mother, by the time I had my daughter, since I'm the youngest, my mother's health wasn't very well. So she could babysit when she was a baby, but after she started walking, she couldn't. Both my sisters work, they had their own kids, their own. So it was mostly just me and her. I mean, you just learn how to make it work.
Yeah, there's a lot of juggling and a lot of help too. I get help from a lot of people. I usually wake up about 5:30 and get ready for my day. I need to make sure I'm ready to go before either of my boys get up so I can help them do what they need to do. I get my boys up around requires a lot of assistance, like verbal prompts to make sure he's doing what he needs to do. And helping him get ready and that type of thing takes a lot of time. I drop my kids off at different schools because Alex in middle school now. And then I actually am fortunate enough to work from home. So I come back to my home and I'm able to work. And so then I'm available if Alec would not feel well, need to come home, go to a doctor appointment, that type of thing. I pick the boys up about 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. We don't do a lot of after-school type of activities just because Alexander, due to the mitochondrial disease, is so exhausted by the time the end of the day comes. So there's really not a lot of shuffling after school, but it's all about dinner and baths and homework, which requires a lot of one-on-one. And then they're normally in bed by 9, and then I go back to work and do a lot of work on my laptop till about 1 o'clock.
But it's hard when you're working full-time and a single parent and, you know, trying to juggle everything to get to work on time and get her to school and all that, so it was hard, but.
It changes everything from the basics, from, you know, the food you eat, you know, changed drastically, you know, what we were doing. And maybe it started a little slower than I remember it. And, you know, you do something, you see some results, and you say, okay, this did something, let's go down this path, and that's kind of how we started with the biomedical stuff. All of our children go to different schools. Because of their differing needs, especially our more autistic boy, I have to take him out of town. So we wake up usually about 6 o'clock, and we have to make all of their lunches for the day because they are on special diets. So we make their lunches, and their breakfast obviously is a special diet too, so that all takes, you know, more than just pouring a bowl of cereal on most mornings. They need their special stuff. And we make their lunches, we get them, and we go to school. I leave to drive an hour. I leave at 7:30. I drive an hour.
Our oldest one gets on the bus, though.
Our oldest one gets on the bus. Our middle one I take out of town. I drive an hour, get there, and my wife takes our little girl to school. And so we're all basically separated at about 9 a.m. My wife goes to work, I go to work. Sometimes I drive between 2 to 4 hours every day. My wife works in town, so she has a pretty stressful job in that right. Then we have the kids' activities after school. We have to pick them up. So between 2 and 5, we're in the process of retrieving our children. And again, talking about being disoriented, I mean, you're really, and you kind of have these expectations of how your life is going to play out. I mean, you know, you kind of have an idea. We grow up, we do well in high school, we go to college, you know, we're very safe people, you know, we kind of follow.
Yeah, we thought, you know, our kids would kind of model after our lives, right? I mean, that's kind of your expectation.
Sure, yeah.
So what was your life like?
Yeah, so you try everything, and that's kind of what we've done is try everything. And I think it was really just some struggle for some measure of control because it felt out of our control at that point, you know. So we're trying to find any method where we can control this. And I mean, to varying degrees of success, we've been able to make improvements and all that. But I think at first it was more for our sake, you know, looking for all of these things out there to help our son so we can feel like we're doing whatever we can, so we don't look back with regrets that we didn't try to get a handle on these things. So I think you fumble around, and my wife especially is very, you know, detail oriented and wanting to map it out, have some level of certainty. And at the beginning, spreadsheet it out. At the beginning, we had no certainty what to make of this. It was all new to us. So.
All the time, you know, are you ever going to let your daughter live in a group home or, you know, live on her own? And that's, you know, it's hard to let go. That was something I had to learn too, because as she was growing up, you get so used to doing things for them that you do it automatically. And then next thing you know, like my sister says, well, she can do that. She did it at my house. I'm like, so she's kind of pulling the wool over my eyes because I'm still doing it for her, but it's my own fault because I didn't give her the opportunity to do it. I just had done it for so long, I thought I needed to keep doing it. So you constantly have to step back a little bit and let them do those things for themselves. And there's things that, like, her idea of a clean room and my idea of a clean room are not the same, but you got to pick your battles. You got to pick your battles about what's most important. Her room's clean enough for her. I just try not to go in there. That's not the most important thing on the top of our list of what's important. So, pick your battles.
What about the father, do you mind me asking? You see the picture?
Not really.
No.
No, he's never been very involved. I mean, she sees him, but he never helped, like, with anything. Like, I have to be at work at 7, and she didn't have to be at work at school till 9. Never did he ask, could, you can bring her here and I'll take her to school for you. There was never, I had just make arrangements on my own.
Was he on board with the diagnosis and supporting her in any way he can to help her?
No, he said that there wasn't anything wrong with anybody in his family, so it must be my fault. So that was pretty much the end of our relationship right there. Probably he was looking for somebody to blame at the beginning, just like I was. And so, I mean, still to this day, I don't feel like he knows her very well.
Early intervention is very important, and I think it's one of the most important pieces when you have a child with special needs or disability. But the way things are right now, once they transition out of early intervention, they go to the school and they get services where probably aren't always appropriate. As a parent, you're never getting what you think your child needs to be their best. You're always wanting more. But then once they transition from school into adulthood, there's really nothing there. There's no support for the families. We have a lot of individuals that are 30, 40, 50 years old, still living with their families, not receiving services, and then their parents are elderly, still taking care of, an adult with a disability. And there's really nothing available for those elderly parents. There's nothing available for their children who are adult age, capable of employment, capable of independent living, but just need that support, and it's not there a lot of the times.
We do get some family help to get everybody back home. Quinn's mom helps us out on a daily basis with, getting our oldest boy and our youngest girl home from school and doing after-school activities. So she's very helpful.
And we've had good parents, good people that raised us. We both come from very similar families, very, very, very similar families of hardworking people.
That pushed us.
That pushed us a little bit, or had those expectations of us too, and we were happy. So I think that makes a big difference. I think that what it does is with any kind of emergency or it's not any kind of situation like this, it just brings out who you naturally are anyway. It kind of raises that your natural kind of personality. It raises
Yes.
that. It brings out who you are really.
I mean, we've been so lucky with our work situation. My husband actually stayed at home for the first 10 years?
8 or 9 years at least.
8 or 9 years to,
Right. So I could work at home and still take care of the children.
Yeah, so they didn't have to seek childcare. I mean, and that was part of our family goals originally. So, and that was a family decision that we made early on before our first child was born.
He's in middle school, first year middle school this year. He goes to public school.
Is he with regular children?
He is for a portion of his day. He has language arts and reading and math with a special education teacher in a room with probably about 5 to 10 other children. And then for social studies and science, he's in a gen ed classroom with a one-on-one paraprofessional that helps him. He also has the one-on-one para in any specials like music or health, and he's also in band, so she goes along to band with him.
Wow. And so, how's he doing in school?
He's doing relatively well. I have several concerns when a new school year starts. My first is he going to be safe? Alec will oftentimes wander off if he's not interested in the topic, let's just say. And I have concerns with he's very small for his age, with his small size of getting shuffled around in the hallway with big middle schoolers and not getting to where he needed to be. So he's got the pair for that, to make sure he gets to where he needs to be.
I see.
When she got in high school, she really got a really good teacher, and she started liking going to school again.
That's great.
So a teacher can make all the difference in the world.
Yes.
Not just for the children, but for the parents too. So
Make your life
Through the school system, and they did the original analysis, and their answers came back with autism. Early intervention was great because in Indiana, at least, it's very family-centered. Your support plan is based on the family dynamic and what's best for the family as well as the child. Now, once your child turns 3 and they go into the school system, it's not the same model. They're not based on the family. It's always based on the child and what they need academically. And, most children, especially kids with autism, they may have deficits that need assistance with academically, but you can't overlook the social aspect and the sensory needs of the child. So those needs weren't being met, so we had to go somewhere else to help with that. Came along with some OT and speech. And then we also found some horse therapy,
Horseback riding, yeah.
through some friends that, so we did that for about 1.5 years, and, found, and that put us in contact with other parents as well. We also, through our research, we started finding the alternative biomedical type treatments through the DAM network, and so we explored doing diets and supplements and that kind of thing. Every child is individual, so definitely, services will be beneficial to, different kids. Myself, Alexander received probably about 20 hours of ABA a week when he was in kindergarten and 1st grade. That really helped give him kind of a push. He was, ready for learning, and then when he got to school and then when he'd come home, he would have a half day of ABA. So it really helped to reinforce the specific things he was working on at school. Due to him being so exhausted at the end of the day, we're not currently doing ABA. We try to do that over the summer to keep reinforcing issues and to work with socialization, because with him being 12, that's a concern of mine, is being able to make friends and keep friends and that type of thing. They're also working on things that he can do out in the community to do appropriate behaviors and that type of thing. So ABA's definitely been beneficial for him. He's come a long way. He communicates.
Yeah, he does.
He initiates conversations now where, you would have, before you would have to go up and, face him, looking him in the eye and ask him a question to get a one-word answer, or, he's not repeating questions anymore like we said earlier on. That was pretty much distinguished with ABA.
Enough of it to know that the quality of the service of the ABA makes a big difference too. But it just takes such a big effort on the therapist side. It takes constant, and you have to know what you're doing and do it well. There's good ABA and there's bad ABA, and just because you call it ABA doesn't mean it's going to be good. Yeah, it doesn't mean it's So that makes a huge difference, you know, and I think as parents, you kind of have to get involved with that a little bit and know the difference, and that's not an easy thing to know, you know, what's good and what's bad about your child's therapy. A lot of times, especially at the beginning, you're just kind of, well, they're the experts, right? You just kind of leave it up to the professionals. And after seeing a lot of different levels of it, you know, you learn to know what's good and what's bad and what's working and how long it should take and all those good things. So some of it just kind of through experience.
The Autism Resource Center does a teen group that meets monthly, and that's a place that he's able to socialize with other children with autism, all young adults, and be able to interact.
Does he like that?
He does. You know, he's higher functioning, so he likes to make friends, but it's very difficult for him. But I love the teen group because it's a safe place. You know, obviously the children have different issues, so we're not going to have bullying. We're not going to have, you know, kids making fun of each other. It's just a safe place for them to hang out and interact with no pressure.
Okay.
You know, once we got an official diagnosis and, you know, now we can go on. But there were a lot of things earlier, you know, when he was 3, before we got the official diagnosis, that we could kind of interpret in different ways, like the way he would play with toys. He loves train sets, and so he would line things up very organized, and, you know, he was very concerned about perspective. He would line things up very straight. He would take his tracks, the train tracks, and line them up symmetrically. And, you know, and even toys like Legos, he wouldn't stack the Legos. He would line the Legos up, you know, end to end. And so we kind of, you know, we didn't know what to make of that. Or he would take a train or any kind of wheel and turn it upside down and just be looking at the wheel rolling like that. And so, you know, we didn't want to know what to make of it at first. As parents, you don't know these signs
And early on, autism wasn't, in the media a lot.
Yeah, mid-2005 or so, 2006.
Yeah.
It wasn't as obvious.
And you're not going to get the services without the diagnosis.
My daughter's pretty high functioning. When she was about 16, she decided that she didn't want to go to the babysitters anymore during the summer. And so I was like, she'd always gone to the sitter no matter what. So, but she was really adamant about not wanting to go to the sitter anymore. So I told her we could try it. We laid down, some specific rules. And I said, if you break any of the rules, it's over. You're going back to the sitter. Because these are rules that are important for your safety. Okay? And so she followed all the rules, and she's been able to stay by herself while I go to work since she was 16. And don't ever be afraid to ask for help. Okay? Even if, you need to find a good doctor or pediatrician that you trust. And when I didn't have any place else to turn, I went to him, and he helped me. But you got to have trust, He's got to, if even now, he'll tell you that she's not his patient. It's like one of his own kids. We've, seen him for at least 10 years, so he's watched her grow up. He's seen all the changes. He thinks she's hilarious too. But we're family. It's not just doctor-patient thing. So we were fortunate in that. Not everybody's probably going to find that, but we were fortunate. He treats a lot of special needs kids because I've sent him a lot of patients. He is a family practitioner, a pediatrician, and internal medicine. So, and he really loves his special needs kids. Don't give up. Keep looking. I couldn't even tell you how many different doctors we went to see before we found him. No, I don't think she ever had any problems in school. She might have had a couple problems on the bus. And then they started letting her sit right behind the school bus driver so that, you know, he could keep an eye and make sure nothing was going on. And then when, like, we live in a big subdivision, I have the only in-ground pool in the subdivision, and all the kids want to come over and swim, right? Well, if you can't be nice to my daughter on the bus, you sure ain't coming over to my house to swim.
I think it's good for Alec that I was born just to be very stubborn and independent. I think that served me well because I've never really taken no for an answer when it comes to him. If I didn't like some of the feedback I got from a provider, you know, I would challenge that, and I think that really has helped me get for him what he needs. You know, I think that served us both. Unfortunately for him, Alec is also very stubborn, and although it's not easy for me as a parent raising a stubborn child, I think it's going to serve him well when he's an adult.
Can't have control over the experiences I might have. I do have control over the way that I respond to those challenges, and that's been quite a life lesson. It's quite something to learn. And these things have helped me in all aspects of my life, not just in terms of my life as a parent, but I think it's made me a much better life partner for my wife. I think it's made me a much better teacher. As I said, I teach college age and older folks how to do improvisational movement, and I think it's taught me how to help people listen to one another and learn from one another.
She's in the Special Olympics, so they have activities, different activities all year round, depending on the weather. She does equiventure, which is therapeutic horseback riding. Now she's getting CHEO services, so they go out in the community and she like volunteers at the Humane Society. They go to the library. I don't know what they do, to be honest, all the time. I mean, I can't keep track of every 4-hour shift, but.
Oh, so she's active.
Yes, so the staff person keeps her out in the community for the whole 4 hours. She takes her to bowling for me. Like that right now, since it's winter, it's just bowling. Yeah, that's it. So, and music therapy. So like staff picks her up for music therapy for me. And then they usually go get something to eat, go to bowling, and then after bowling, they'll, you know, my daughter, she likes to go to the pet store. They'll go to the library, things like that.
She likes animals.
She loves animals, yes. That's like her favorite thing. That's why she enjoys volunteering at the Humane Society. We have a dog and a cat, so she has no problem like cleaning out cages and, you know, cleaning up dog poo. She wanted a dog for a long time, and I just didn't feel like I had time to take care of one, so we made an agreement that you take care of the dog, which includes food, water, and cleaning up the dog poo outside, and we'll get one. And so she's been real good about it. I've never had to do any of that. The first thing I tell every parent is nobody knows your child better than you do. Don't let a doctor or a psychologist or somebody at the school talk you into doing something that you are not comfortable with. And they don't know everything, okay? Nobody knows your child better than you, and I say go with your gut, and you're probably going to go against the grain a lot of times, but oh well. I had to learn to be the squeaky wheel to get what I wanted for my daughter, and I have. And I encourage every other parent to be vocal and not be afraid to speak up. And just because the school says you need to do this and this and this, that's their suggestions, okay? You don't have to do what the school says. You don't have to do what the doctor says. You are in charge. They have to do what you say. That's my biggest piece of advice. Well, do your job and do what you're supposed to do for my child. I mean, every time she's had to go to a new school, I always took her to school on the first day. I made sure I met her teacher. Then I went down to the office. I made sure I met the principal, the vice principal, the secretary, everybody that was in there. I wanted them to know who I was because they were going to be seeing me every day. And they better make sure that nobody mistreats my child while she's here in their care. I don't want no bullying. I don't want nobody making fun of her at school, on the bus, none of that. Yes, I did. But that was my job. I'm her parent. Nobody's going to do it for her but me. And so these other parents need to do the same thing. Nobody's going to defend your child but you. Okay? Even while they're at school, they're supposed to be doing what's best for the kids. It's still your job to make sure that's being done. Because when your kid's coming home from school crying every day, there's a reason for that. Know what's available now. I know that the younger your child, the better, intervention is, you'll make more progress. I think if my daughter could have had better services when she was 5 or 6, she would be even better than she is now. But there wasn't any services back then. So if your child is small, you need to get out there and find what's available. And it takes time. I spent a lot of time researching, looking for places, talking to people, picking people's brain, calling doctors. But now it should be easier to find those services. But you got to do it. Nobody's going to do it for you. Nobody's going to knock on your door and say, oh, look, you can have this and this and this. Or you can get this from the government. They're not going to do that. You got to get out there and find it for yourself. I'd like to see the parents more involved because I don't think they're involved enough. They think the school will take care of it or whatever, but they don't. So I'd like to see the parents become more involved in what's going on because, like I said, nobody's going to fight for your child but you. So if you want those services, if you think she needs them or deserves them or whatever, you need to make sure it happens. At the end of the day, she's made me a better person for sure. Yeah, I didn't always look at it as a gift, but it's really been a blessing. It's been a journey for sure. But I mean, I have learned so much, and I am grateful. I do think that I am a much better person because of her. So sometimes she still drives me nuts, but it's just like having a teenager, I guess. They drive you nuts. So we have good days. We still have bad days, but the bad days are way, way far between compared to what it was when she was growing up. We had a lot of bad days then. Not the smartest kid, but she has a lot of good qualities. Okay, she's kind. So you just have to look at the positive things and pick your battles, and it'll be all right.
No, it's so funny they can have such concentration and such ability in certain areas. And just he's really good at three-dimensional kind of puzzles is really what he's very good at, and kind of very accurate recreation of things. He can see something and recreate it again. And again, that's where he can really do it down to the minutest detail, but coming to create something on his own, something original, something beyond what he has seen is
interested in, you know, math or something. And you try to grow their interest, and they all have different interests, and just try to do what's best for each one.
Trying to make him as happy, you know, and a person as possible. And we know that, you know, means being able to care for yourself and being able to be healthy and happy in whatever you do. She meets these things head on. She doesn't skirt around the problem. When she sees a problem, you know, we plan a course, and this is what we do. And so I've taken that, and more than just this, and it goes back to where we were in high school together. When we first started going out, I've taken all of my cues and my source of wanting to be better for her. And you want to be better for your children. You want to give them everything that you can possibly give them, every opportunity. So it starts for me, it starts with her, and saying I want to live up to her expectations. I mean, and that's important to me. And that's made me a better person, you know, for the last 20 years we've been together, you know, so, and to see, you know, after the initial kind of shock, the initial kind of pitying your situation, you know, the initial kind of, you know, what are we going to do here? You know, she had a plan. She knew we're going to do everything possible, and there's just no way around that. If we have to, you know, if we have to change our lifestyle, if we have to change what food we eat, if we have to go into serious debt, if we have to not, you know, get the job we want to, that's fine, because our family, our children are, you know, they're going to have what they need. So that's where I get it. And I know Angie, obviously a mother, is wanting to do these things for her child, you know. So I'm not saying it's always easy, you know, that's for sure. And we've always been, like I said, we've been together forever. I feel very lucky, but we still have our disagreements. We still have our differing perspectives and opinions on what should be done, or what is the cause, or, you know, what is best for our family in the time that we have. And we've never fought so much over anything other than these things that we're dealing with here. The diets, you know, why can't our kids just have a regular diet and enjoy, you know, some of the things that every other kid is enjoying?
Macaroni and cheese.
Right, yeah, and it would save us, you know, why do we have to invest all of our time, again, just together and with our children, you know, making these plans and making these concessions and making them concede that, you know, some of the things they can and can't have and do. So the limitations, we struggle with that, you know, and it's some very serious issues, and sometimes you're going against, you know, you're afraid other people are going to think you're insane, you're crazy for trying these things, and maybe we are. Maybe you are.
I think I am.
But it's a good kind of insane. It's a good kind of insane. It's always with the best intentions possible, you know, and that means a lot. Like,
I would just want to say that you're not alone, that there are other families out there that are dealing with all the same issues that they're dealing with. And there have been families in the past to where, you know, it wasn't as easy to get the services that, you know, a lot of us get today. And then I'm sure in the future it's going to be easier than it is now. But just not to know that they're not alone, and that there's some other families struggling just like they are, and just to educate yourself.
I think that we've learned so much about the services that are out there, and you know, there's different types of therapy. There's different kind of services through the government and the schools. There is so much to learn. It's like learning a new language. Basically, I always think of it as that, because before I had no idea about IEPs or what the special education system really looked like. You know, we were so surprised that once our youngest son got his diagnosis, that through the school system, you know, they kind of took over with some services services are out there, the local therapies that could be a potential for your child. And each child is so different. It's just like our two sons. We took different approaches with both of them because their needs are different. So we don't do the same things for both of them, but I think that's really the biggest message, is to try to, get with other parents. Yeah, it's the getting the diagnosis when you know, in your heart of hearts as a parent, know that something is not right. And I wasn't searching for an autism diagnosis. I wasn't happy when I got it, but I knew that something wasn't right, and it was good for me to put a name to it, whether it be autism or whatever it was. Okay, this is what I'm dealing with, and then I could figure out how to not really fix it, but what would be the best steps to take.
I see.
It turned out to be a gift. It sure didn't seem like it at the time. And, I think for a long time you just want to know why me, why me, why me, But, but she has made me a better person. I don't think she's made me a better person. I have more empathy for other people that have the same, or going through the same things we did. I feel like I'm probably more unselfish than as I look back on it now, I was probably used to be a very selfish person, but when you have a child like that, that kind of goes out the window.
Is that you're not alone. You're not alone. And when you get this diagnosis, you feel like you're the only one in the world having to deal with this. And especially if you don't know, then you do feel like there's nothing for you. What do you do? And that's always been my approach, and why I like talking to families, and why we started a nonprofit, is because I know that feeling where you just feel lost, you feel alone, you don't know what to do, and you think it's devastating. And it's not devastating. You live through it, and everybody can be happy and healthy, and that's kind of the support that families need, especially at the beginning, to know that there are people who know what this is like,
I'm a Medicaid case manager, so, Alexander actually, led me to my career. Helping him, and all the networking I did with other families. I thought, if there's a way that I can get paid and make a career out of helping families, and I'm very fortunate to be able to do that while working from home. So now I'm flexible enough to where if he's sick or needs to go to an appointment, I can do that.
The biggest turning point for me, well, there's been more than one, but the first turning point was, when she started school, and of course we were having all kinds of problems. They had her see the school psychologist, and they wanted to medicate her. I didn't want to, so they made me go see a outside psychologist. And we went to see this man, and he probably spent 10 minutes with me and my daughter, and then had somebody take her out of the room and said, your daughter's retarded, and it's a waste of time for you to even send her to school. And I was, probably for the first time ever in my life, speechless. I didn't know what to say, so I just got up and left, cried all the way home. And then, after I got home, the more I thought about it, the madder I got. And so I went back over there to the office, and I demanded to see the person in charge, and told him what the other doctor had said. I told him, first of all, I can't stand the R word, okay? She's not a retard, okay? Just because she learns differently doesn't make her. I told him how unprofessional I thought he was. And I said, we're a small community, and I know just about everybody in it, special needs like my daughter, and I will make sure that they know not to come here and be treated with such disrespect. And so, right then I made up my mind that I was going to prove him wrong, and nobody was going to stand in my way. And then when she started going through puberty, that was our next really big rough patch. Because she was having a lot of feelings and things that she didn't know how to verbalize. And we started having terrible fights, verbal at first. And then it started becoming physical. And so I knew that I needed help. And so our family doctor, who's a pediatrician, who's awesome, I just went to him and told him that I needed help. And so he sent me to a psychologist, and we went to meet him, and I didn't feel like, after the other experience that we had, I didn't want to go. And I told him right up front that I think you guys are a bunch of quacks, and I don't think you're going to be able to help me, but I'm here because I don't know where else to turn, and I trust my doctor. And he was totally okay with everything I had to say. He said, I understand how you feel because of the other experience you had. And we probably saw him for at least 18 months. We started seeing him probably 2 or 3 times a week at the beginning, and then less and less as time went on. And he helped us a lot. I mean, he would see her separately, he would see me separately, and then he would see us together. And I think he helped me as much as he helped her. You know, he helped me, there was just some things I hadn't thought of that he brought to my attention, you know, that, and probably the one thing that really sticks out in my head is, he said, people naturally focus on the negative, and he said, you need to focus on the positive. And he said, I'm going to give you this notebook, and I want you to write down all the good things that she does every day. And I was like, that notebook's going to be empty. I mean, I was just so angry and frustrated. But he said, just try. Every day, just start out to try and find one thing, one positive thing that you could write down. And so I started doing that, and every day it got easier. Every day I could write down more things that were positive. And so that really changed my outlook on a lot of things, not just with her, but life in general. And so that really was a big, that improved our quality of life after that. So I'm really glad I went. When you're in school, the special needs community is very close. You rely on each other. You know, you can learn a lot from other parents that have found other things that you don't know about. So communicate with all the other parents that are involved, and, you know, give information back and forth to each other, and just keep on. Don't give up, because it will get better. May not seem like it, but it will. Eventually, it will.
Yeah.
But,
Sounds like.
and if you're lucky enough to have a spouse, you know, make sure they're involved too. Don't take, you know, if you have a spouse, they need to be doing just as much as you are. You know, don't put it all on yourself, because it's really hard by yourself. But I know a lot of, it seems like a lot of times it falls on the mom, and the dad doesn't do very much, and that's a shame, because you know what, they're missing out. And they're not only are they missing out on their child's life, they're missing out on life lessons that's going to change their life for the rest of their lives.
Great message.
We're like, okay, now what? So it does, you know, it does change you. It's something that, yeah, outside of yourself.
Yeah, it's something bigger than yourself. Yeah. So I mean, that's
That you're responsible for, you know.
and nobody else is. Nobody else cares. Nobody else is going to do those jobs. You do. You have to, you know, get into it. You know, you have to dig your hands right into it and roll up your sleeves and do it, because nobody else will. And maybe it is push that, you know, just a sense of responsibility, work ethic, and a selflessness. So it really it becomes, you know, initially a disappointment just to and adapting to his situation. instead of trying to fix him to make him to be like everybody else, you know, you try to just give him some tools to adapt to the world. And so
that he could potentially.
right, and still be happy and not be frustrated. I guess that's kind of what we're aiming for now. He can still, with his, you know, his skills and the things he is good at is.
I formed a support group years and years ago. But I was working with another family with a child with autism, and we decided that there was just no services locally. And in the very beginning, we wanted it to be more of a place where families could connect, because you feel so isolated and that you're alone, where, you know, with the statistics the way they are, you're not alone. And we wanted families to be able to connect, and then it kind of just grew from there to where we have a support group and a lending library, and you know, all these ideas of things that we want to provide for the community, but at the end of the day, we're still, you know, a family with a child with autism or a single parent with autism, and we're needing to find other parents that want to help support us and get some more programs going.
I would be, yeah, and I would be happy to help other parents learn how to advocate for their kids, because now I think I'm really good at it. So at least it's better now. Parents have more options than I had. So take advantage of all of those, every option, check out everything. What works for your kid may not work for somebody else, or vice versa. So try it all. You know, music therapy, therapeutic horseback riding. There's all kinds of things out there, and a lot of them don't cost anything. So keep looking. You got the web now. You know, get on there, do some research. I spent a lot of hours doing that. But there's a lot more out there now. You just got to look